Last time on Guns and Glitter, the Vixens stole Grace's regular clients, making it impossible for her to make enough money to have a place to stay for the night. One of the Vixens crossed a line with a client and brought down the wrath of Mr. Nillson, the club manager. Welcome to CC Writes. My name is CC Lepki, and this week I am sharing part 11 of my story, Guns and Glitter. Before we begin, don't forget to hit like and subscribe and hit the bell notification button so you'll know when the next episode comes out. Blossom wasn't ready to end the fight. She jumped in front of Nillson and blocked his way to his office.
"You can't fire me." "I damn well can."
Nillson leaned in close.
"You're lucky I don't call the police."
The commissioner laughed. He strode across the room with a smug smile on his face.
"Call the police? I'm already here, aren't I?"
The expression on Nillson's face was an intriguing mix of surprise, fury, and self-doubt.
"Commissioner Hayes?"
The two men watched each other, chests puffed out and eyes locked in challenge. Commissioner Hayes stepped closer and wrapped his hand around Blossom's waist.
"Is there a problem that requires police attention?"
Nillson looked away. "There's no problem."
"I tell you, Sonny, you should give this lady a raise."
Hayes squeezed her again.
"She is a real people pleaser."
Blossom grinned at Nillson, but he shook his head.
"She's no longer welcome here." "But nothing happened. Isn't that right, Sonny?"
The commissioner stared down his nose at Nillson, but Nillson shook his head.
"I think one good turn deserves another, don't you think? Or did you forget that I already warned you that we record our security footage?"
Commissioner Hayes went pale. He let go of Blossom and stepped away from her.
"Well, I'm sure I remember her offering problematic services, which I quite clearly refused." "Clearly."
"Hey!" Blossom tugged at the commissioner's shirt. "What are you doing? You promised."
"Get your things, Blossom, and don't come back."
Nillson stormed into his office. Hayes beat a hasty retreat, leaving Blossom alone and disheveled in front of Nillson's closed door. She turned in a confused circle, eyes darting around the room as if she looked for an ally. When no one stepped forward, Blossom hung her head. Slowly, she made her way to the back room to collect her things. Grace set her glass down on the counter. Well, that was insane. The bartender swiped her glass and put it in a half-empty plastic bussing tray. "You better get in that office. Nillson looks pissed." She stood and stretched, then waved goodbye to the bartender. Grace knocked briefly on the office door, then walked into the room in time to see Nillson ejecting a security tape from a ridiculously out-of-date VHS player. He glanced up and waved it in the air, irritated.
"Remind me that I need to get rid of this."
Rather than throw it in the trash or pull out the magnetic tape, he opened a small vault in the wall and tossed it inside. Bastard. Nillson walked around his desk and sat down heavily. He rubbed his temples, eyes closed tight. Blossom had a 30-minute set at 9. It's not as good as primetime money, but it's the next best thing. You want the slot? Grace watched him carefully. "I'll take it. But why did you pick me? Keera's dances are better." He shrugged. "I noticed you haven't had much luck tonight. Figured you could use the extra cash." For a few seconds he stared at the wall, then sighed. "I also saw you sleeping in the alley last night." He poked at the TV on the desk next to him. One of the screens showed the alley where she took refuge. It was a really crap day for the other girls to steal your regulars. Grace nodded. Yeah, it was. Nillson smiled. It won't last long. Those girls are miserable out there right now. I give it a day or two and they'll be right back to their regular tricks. In the meantime, you can have Blossom's dance slots. It won't net you quite as much, but you could keep yourself in a hotel until things get back to normal. Yeah, I could do that. She clenched her fists next to her side. So much for getting back on her feet. All right, that's all. Get back to work. Grace stepped out of Nillson's office and quietly closed the door behind her. Even with the extra dancing shift, she wouldn't make much more than $300 for the night. She chewed her lip and watched the other women slinking around the lounge. Keera bumped her shoulder. Hey, sugar. What's wrong? You're looking long in the tooth. Long in the what? What does that even mean? You look sad, kitten. What's going on? The much taller woman plucked at Grace's fringe of hair that escaped her loose braid to frame her face. I need money. Grace glared at Keera. And you and your Vixens aren't exactly helping the situation. Keera grinned. We all need money, sugar. But don't worry, your clients take too much work, and they're boring. I'm going back to my regulars. She draped her arm around Grace's shoulder and pulled her into a soft hug. Frenzies? Grace rolled her eyes. She held up a pinky finger. Frenzies. Her voice was dry, but she smiled when Keera hooked the pinky with her own. If you're hurting for cash, I might be able to help. Keera glanced around to make sure the other girls weren't listening. Ducking her head, she whispered into Grace's ear. I do house calls off the clock. Bachelor parties, frat houses, pranks. Grace lifted her eyebrows. Is Nillson okay with you moonlighting like that? Nillson can suck my dick. He only owns my time while I'm at work, not while I'm off the clock. She grinned, and Grace was immediately sucked into the mischievous smile. All right, so how do your house calls help me? I've got a gig tonight. You can tag along. They're paying 4 times my usual rate, which means it should be a nice score to split. 70-30 split, of course. Of course. Grace leaned her head back and closed her eyes. Why are they paying so much more than your normal rate? Flashing stage lights gleamed off of a spot of body glitter on Keira's shoulder. The woman on stage performed acrobatics on the pole. Keera patted Grace's cheek. Who cares? Probably some rich idiots who think a stripper is the same thing as a prostitute. Isn't that dangerous? Not as dangerous as it could be if I bring a friend. Keera waggled her eyebrows and Grace laughed. Well, what do you say? 60-40. I charge extra for a protection fee. Keera giggled and bear-hugged Grace, lifting the smaller woman off of her feet. Deal! Grace could already tell she was going to regret it. But she regretted a lot of things. It wasn't like one additional bad decision was going to change anything. Keera set her down, and they made plans to meet up after work. Then Grace went backstage to stretch for her first dance routine of the night. She would worry about the house call later. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Guns and Glitter. I hope you like the story so far. If this is your first time watching and you like what you heard, then make sure to go back and check out the story from the beginning. I'll post the link in the description. This is a continuing story, and I plan to share the entire thing with you on a weekly basis until the end. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell notification button so you'll know when the next episode comes out. Till next time, see you later.